Chrystia Freeland. We'll start with Chrystia Freeland. I absolutely 100% believe that she makes her kids take the subway and walk and ride their bikes. 100%. I totally believe that she would be like that because she just seems like that kind of person, right? But here's the Western Standard. She says, quote, "I walk, I take the subway. I make my kids walk and ride their bikes and take the subway," said Freeland. Yeah, sure. According to Blacklock's reporter, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland makes frequent use of government-issued cars and chauffeurs in Toronto. Expense account records contradict Freeland's claim Friday that she avoided car travel and attending meetings on foot or by public transit. And I was asking for anybody with a picture of Chrystia Freeland on public transit, post it to your Twitter. Send it to me and I'll post it to my Twitter. Does this exist? Does she do this? I don't think so, right? I have never, ever seen... I've never seen it. You'd think like people would recognize Chrystia Freeland on the subway in Toronto, right? But never seen it. Gold Telegraph. Let's talk about debt. And we're going to talk about debt and housing because it's kind of a yin and yang thing. And what's going on in Japan is interesting, and I'll give you a bit of color on it. But Gold Telegraph says Japan's 10-year government bond yield is now at a 9-year high. The higher this goes, the more it will be felt worldwide. And Kathleen says the core of global debt is now unstable. And Deepak says India is at 91%. That's very high, right? And Kathleen kind of provides the color I was talking about. She says the ratio of debt to GDP isn't just about the ratio at any moment, but about the future ability to service debt through growth. With a young population and positive growth rate, India is less worrying. Japan has one of the oldest populations and 3 decades of zero growth. So with this debt, it looks like Japan can't pay it back. And that's bad, leading to increased yields. The bond yield being at a 9-year high is bad for everybody and will impact other financial institutions and lending and rates and all of that other stuff. And this is adding to the kind of imbalance and stability in the global finance market, right? And so it's not good. And the other indicators are not good. Now, we could fix these problems and fix them, I wouldn't say easily, but I think fix them by getting on a different track, right? But that prioritizes sound fiscal management over woke virtue signaling, fundamentally, right? Here's Garnet Genius, and he says, liberals spend money without thinking about where it's coming from. In 8 years, Trudeau has created more debt for Canada than every other prime minister combined. We need a strong economy driven by a strong private sector that's able to create jobs and deliver opportunity. Right. So if you're productive, if you find a way to deliver value, and deliver value can be drill this product, oil, gas, LNG, whatever it is, this product out of the ground and get it to port where they can get it into processing, refining areas and get it to market for consumers and do that in the most efficient way possible and make it cheap, right? Because people love cheap oil and efficiently gathered energy, right? That's a product. And if you can get that to market, then Canada's economic activity increases, more taxes are made by the government, everybody does better, so on and so forth, right? That's sound fiscal management, right? Regardless of the product, whether it's oil or a trinket, a widget, a digital product. India exports software. They export more software, India does, than Saudi Arabia exports oil, if you're looking at dollars. That's interesting to me. That's productive. That's hugely productive, right? And something you can do from anywhere. And they're proving it. They do that. They just do it. You didn't need oil under the ground to produce that software and to train your citizens to produce that software. Analytical thinking, and it's not very easy. It's complicated, but at the same time, they have created that human resource and then exported that human resource. We should be doing that, but we're not. We're failing on so many levels. It's unbelievable. Here is Garnet Genius. He gets a little dry. Really, it's a minute long and it feels longer than that. Here we go.
This is something conservatives understand in particular, that we want to have strong social programs and that strong social programs must be built on a foundation of economic prosperity. If we ignore the economic prosperity side of the equation, and then we talk about, well, we want to be giving more money to people, well, that's not going to add up at a certain point. And this is why we need to have a strong economy driven by a strong private sector that's able to create jobs and deliver opportunity. And that a strong economy provides the platform on which we can then do more for each other, do more for the most vulnerable. But it has to be on that foundation of prosperity. And it's something that the government and the parties of the left in general, I think, very much fail to understand. We need to have a strong economy built on a strong private sector. And that requires the kind of regulatory modernization that we're talking about.
See, I don't know exactly. This is the second reading of S6, an act respecting regulatory modernization. I don't know the details of S6, so I can't really speak to what he's talking about there. But I think the principles of a functioning economy would be so much better than woke virtue signaling. But I don't know about the regulatory framework. Like, I don't know what they're trying to shove down our throats. And usually, I don't know. This regulatory framework will be great. It's like, hi, I'm from the government and we're here to help. Like, no, thank you. I'm not opening the door to you. Go away. It's faulty. It doesn't usually. I mean, I suppose you could come roller coasters, a regulatory framework around roller coasters. That works, right? Great. Everybody can agree. Like, you don't want people flying off the roller coasters. I played Roller Coaster Tycoon, right? So people can get on board for that. Safety regulations for vehicles, right? Like there are places for that, but it seems like we're over-regulating everything, and the way we're over-regulating it is. Certain people need to be cut out of this. If you say these things, if you hold these beliefs, you need to be cut out. So I'm very, very hesitant on regulatory frameworks and regulatory blah at this point in time because they're being misused. Sorry, the policy says no homers, right? Like just right. It's just the whole thing is too slippery, and so I'm gun shy with it. Dan McTeague is talking about the inflation and debt, the rest of it, and National Post says inflation is down overall. So why are my grocery bills still going up? Because it doesn't matter that the government says inflation's at 2.9%. If food inflation has gone up 10%, 20%, I think it's 20% in the last year, and I'll show that to you in just a sec. Mortgage rates have gone up 30%. Like the price of your mortgage has gone up 30% in the last year, right? Not to mention the last previous years. And the expense of food and all sorts of other expenses has increased. Gas has gone 50% up in price, right? These things inflated, and they're not counting it there. Oh, don't worry, inflation's at 2% now. Problem solved, you're welcome, right? No. Dan McTeague says it's called gas prices, the stuff everyone overlooks. Oh, by the way, the gas prices are heading up. Inflation will follow. Yeah, so it's at $1.70 a liter now in Guelph. I've seen it at $1.35, and I've seen it at more than $1.70 as well out British Columbia way. Their carbon tax is just working a treat, right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine BC right now without the carbon tax? Right. Imagine Ontario. It's exactly the same, right? BC's had a carbon tax since 2008. Ontario hasn't. Same thing, right? It's like summer, right? Summertime, right? What have you accomplished with the carbon tax? Stealing money from people who couldn't afford to have the money stolen from them. That's all they've accomplished. Here is Ryan O'Connor. He's a lawyer. He says, Canada has the lowest inflation in the G7. So that's the quote from Chrystia Freeland and the finance minister and anybody trying, the Liberal Party in this tweet, trying to make that case. But he continues the quote, for those who don't eat or have a mortgage. According to TD Canada Trust, now they're a bank, they're slanted, they're influenced, they have a bias, understand that, but here's what they say. Being a bank, being aware of money, right? I guess you would think. The components contributing the most upward pressure to inflation are groceries, plus 9.1% year over year. So over last year's prices to this year, up 9.1%. I told you I went to this grocery store. Maybe I didn't. I went to the grocery store and I went to the cereal aisle, and it used to be you could get 3 medium-sized boxes of cereal for $10. So you could get them for $4 each, or 3 for $12, or get a deal 3 for $10, right? And I thought that was okay. I went up to 3 for $11, and I was like, oh man, it's creeping up. And then it went back to 3 for $10, and I was like, yeah, lost leader, right? Like bananas. So I was fine with it. I was fine with it. I have no control over it, so I dealt with it. And now that deal's over, $5 a box, 3 for $15. I am heartbroken. So now I get 2 boxes instead of 3 boxes. But I knew there's going to be a squeeze on my chocolate cereal. I've got to get a manufacturing plant up and running soon. Mark P's chocolate cereal. Ooh, that would be great. I could manufacture and sell chocolate cereal. I would get behind that. Hugely get behind that. 9.1% year over year. So the food is inflating. Not to get waylaid. I'm sorry, I get distracted by chocolate cereal. Mortgage interest costs 30% year over year. Last year, 30% less than this year. Food prices at stores have risen nearly 20% over the past 2 years, largest such increases in over 40 years. So we're living through a blip in history, everyone. We're part of history now. People are going to look back and say, how did they do it? It must have been so tough. And all of these videos will have been scrubbed from the internet by then, so they will really not understand. It's a very interesting thing. But I think that fundamentally, the powers that be understand that inflation's not at 2%. They're saying that, but they know it's not. They know it's not. Okay, just like you know it's not because you go to a grocery store. They're insulated by the price increases because they make $300,000 a year, $200,000 a year, $160,000 a year on the one salary, right? And usually you've got a husband or a wife that works. So like typically 2 incomes. You're pretty comfortable. And if you're that comfortable, maybe you've got some income properties, you've got some passive income, you've got a person helping you manage your money. So they're telling you to invest in certain things and so on and so forth. So that's a real thing that happens. So they're insulated from the money. They may look at the grocery bill at the end of the month and say, that seems expensive, but 20% more than last month. So it is what it is, but they're not at the grocery store. Maybe they've got a personal shopper or something like that. Maybe they get delivery, right? Because they're good liberals and they're following the COVID protocols, right? WND is talking about the fallout from Nigel Farage blowing the whistle on having himself debanked from Coutts NatWest Bank. And so here's the fallout from that. Farage brings down second bank boss. The CEO of Coutts, the exclusive bank that terminated Nigel Farage's accounts for political reasons, has said he bears ultimate responsibility and is consequently resigning, the second top banking figure to go over the Farage scandal in as many days. The consequences for the politicization of banking manifesting itself as the debanking of Brexit leader Nigel Farage for his views, friendships, and Twitter usage continue, with the second bank CEO resigning in 2 days. See, now there have been PPC accounts that have been debanked. I reported on that. It got kind of mediumly widespread coverage after I tweeted about it. But nobody's resigned. I don't think even the mainstream media have covered it. So that's pretty incredible, right? And I mean, you call the bank, verify that this happened. You call the EDA, you call the riding, what's it called? Riding association, right? You call them to verify that these things happened, and then there's a news article, right? Like there's an allegation, there's an email, and I believe the person that sent it to me had access and believed that it was true, and I've since confirmed that. And so it's one of those things where these things are happening and nobody's covering it really in Canada, and that's interesting. But it's also interesting that the mainstream media is kind of widely 50% of the population, I would say, understand that the media is actively lying and not to be trusted, and the other 50% are suspicious, but I don't know that they're out and out distrusting yet. But I think they're probably suspicious, and I couldn't give you the percentage on how suspicious they are, but I think we're potentially going to hit a tipping point, but I don't know what it's going to take, because usually a loud 10% are enough to tip things over, but there's a lot of censorship. So what does the percentage have to be of real people believing something before the censorship can't keep a lid on it, right? Here is further information, further hits to the supply chain and to the economy. This is in the US, but is this mismanagement or is this environmental climate change policies coming into effect that are killing these businesses? This business was given a $700,000 loan 2 years ago. They can't pay it back. And they were given that loan because they were so vital to the supply chain. And now they're gone. So here's Jack, and he's reporting U.S. trucking company going bankrupt. Now, there was rumblings of this in June. People were worried about this in June. But carry on. Yellow, U.S. trucking firm, is laying off staff and preparing to file for bankruptcy. Friday morning, an unknown number of office employees got the following memo. Quote, "We regret to inform you that your employment with Yellow Corporation or one of its subsidiaries will permanently terminate on July 28th, 2023, or within 14 days after the company is shutting down its regular operations on July 28th. That was a couple of days ago. Closing and or laying off employees at all of its locations, including yours. During the pandemic, the company received a $700 million aid from the government, that's U.S. government, by loan. So during an emergency, here's a loan. Thanks. What am I supposed to do with this loan? When am I going to pay this back? What are the terms? You know what I mean? There's a lot wrong with giving loans during an emergency. If you want to give government handouts, should you expect to pay it back, all of it? The whole thing is, there's an emergency. It's unprecedented. We're shutting down the economy. Great. Here's some help in the form of a loan. Yeah, we expect you to pay it all back with interest, right? Like, interest-free loan is supposed to be a beneficial thing, but it seems like predatory lending. Okay, anyway, sorry, I'm just getting off on a tangent again. Apparently failed to handle that and other obligations. So they couldn't pay back the loan and run their business. By the end of March, it had $1.5 billion in unpaid debt. Yellow is one of the largest trucking firms, so bankruptcy could negatively impact supply chains across the country. It would also cause about 30,000 people to lose their jobs. No recession. So is that mismanagement? Is that the company managing things poorly, or is that the external environment, a predatory loan given by the government, called in by the government, and now the supply chain is kind of pooched? Will other companies that are better managed snap up those contracts, snap up those workers, and it'll be a bump, but 20,000 workers will be rehired pretty quickly, and then of the last 10,000, they'll get replaced as kind of the roots firm up and so on and so forth. Like, I could see the economy being elastic enough to, like, wow, Yellow dissolved. I can take these 5 routes today. If I could hire 5 drivers, I'd have these 5 routes filled today. And like other companies I would see would start like vultures saying like, these products need to get filled most of the time. And so the good routes would get snapped up by businesses that are watching this space and looking for an opportunity like this, right? And you would think that all those drivers, most of them would get a job again, right? I'm not sure, but I'd hope. So I don't know. Is that just mismanagement, or is there 30,000 drivers who were trekking around empty rigs that had no products that didn't need delivering, right? Was it just the loan that killed these guys? And if it was the loan, isn't the government responsible for setting the circumstances for that, for setting the aspects of the deal that governed it? It's so frustrating. Anyway, I could be wrong, but it seems like the government stepped in and said, we'll save you. And then the person said, yeah, great. All I have to do is sign here, and they signed there. And then all of a sudden the government said, give us our money back. Like, we're from the government. We're here to help. And we are also here to collect your money. The economic long wave, let's continue. It says, after Canada's economy collapses, a comprehensive reform of the Bank of Canada is needed. I think that if Canada's economy collapses, I think reform of the Bank of Canada will be one thing on the list of many things, but making sure that we're not engaging in predatory lending and victimizing the population and controlling the population through money would be one of the top of the list. And it seems like the Bank of Canada is not our friend at this point in time. Like, reform of the Bank of Canada, I think removal of the Bank of Canada, and then a restructuring, rebuilding of the bank with citizens at the forefront rather than exploiting citizens' production at the forefront. I think, right? People should be prioritized over the spreadsheets. But I understand when the spreadsheets do well, the people do well, blah, 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 blah. I get that. But I think that it is one of those situations where, like, people say, let's increase the minimum wage to $15, $16, $22. In order to live in Toronto now, you need $30 minimum wage. And my argument is, let's increase it to $1,000. Let's increase it to $10,000. Like, where's the limit? If a higher minimum wage means everybody benefits, like, let's just go to the nth degree. $1 million. Like, everybody wants to be a millionaire. Let's make the minimum wage $1 million. What's wrong with this? Obviously, the business would never be able to afford that. It's stupid. It's asinine, right? What they're doing when they increase the amount of money chasing the same goods is they inflate the price of the goods. When I was a kid, $685, $615, depending on how old you were. If you were 18 plus, $685, you would get an apartment for $300. So now the apartment is much more than double the price, right? But you get $15 an hour, and Now you have to pay $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $2,000, $1,400 if you're lucky, $2,000 if you're unlucky for rent, right? It's not $300 anymore, right? So it's one of those things where we are being manipulated through devaluation of currency, manipulated through bleeding hearts saying, oh, well, we need more money. We need more money. You can't just hand people more money without other consequences happening within the economy. And these people understand what they're doing, and what they're doing is on purpose. They understand what they're doing. They're trying to lower the standard of living in the country, it seems. Economic long wave continues. Current problems stem from the central bank's actions: currency debasement, sluggish growth, inflation, a shrinking middle class, a massive credit housing bubble, and vast wealth inequality. Yeah, so there's problems with the structure. There's problems with how we're managing our fiscal responsibilities, our debts. Everything is mismanaged. Our finance minister is a reporter. Enough said. So it's not surprising, right? And I think that we need to get rid of these people because it seems like they're working against our country and against our best interests all the time. It seems like that more and more. Let's talk about housing very quickly. Rex Glacier is sharing this article from the CBC. Asylum seeker says he was told Hamilton had more space than Toronto, right? So we went to Hamilton. Rex says every one of these people Trudeau allowed to walk into Canada should be bused to Ottawa and force the Trudeau government to fix this mess. Once the photo ops are done, so is Trudeau. So maybe not. The idea of weaponizing people and sending them to Ottawa it may sound like a good soundbite. I don't agree with doing that. I think that we should have a policy of, if you cross illegally into Canada, you can never visit the country again, and you get flown home, or you get flown to a central depot in whatever continent you're from, and then maybe we pay for your final travel to like a major city or something like that, and that's it. We're not paying for healthcare for you for a prolonged period of time. We're not housing you for a prolonged period of time. Everybody who's in a hotel right now, deport them. Why? Because this policy is suicidal to our country, suicidal to our culture, suicidal to our continued existence. It makes zero sense to open our borders and flood our country with people when we don't have jobs for them, we don't have housing for them, we don't have hope for them. All that does is breed division and aggression, hate, violence. It's not kumbaya, we can all live here. That's not happening. There's not enough jobs. There's not enough ability or time to integrate. And what's happening is people are ending up living on the street, and they're chasing shelter beds across the GTA and across Ontario. Is that the place? Is that the kind of place you want to live in? Jagmeet Singh says the Liberal government's comments and actions towards Black asylum seekers in Toronto have been callous. It doesn't matter what you say or do. Like, the government spent $226 million or something like that, $160 million going to Toronto and all sorts of other, although Olivia Chow asked for $160 million and she was told no. But then they spent money to house these people anyway. So maybe she was told no and then they did it anyway. But regardless of all that, that's being called callous. Why is that being called callous? If you're going to call us callous anyway, then let's get done what needs to get done. Let's remove this liability. Let's remove this inability to ever get out from under this crushing weight of people who are just flooding here for the handouts. Let's stop it. Let's stop the bleeding. Let's stop the housing increase, the price increases. Let's stop all of that and let's start fixing the problem. But instead, he's saying, oh, you're being callous by what? I think we're being callous by lying to people about the opportunities here. I'm not even going to let Jagmeet speak. Did I let him speak? I'm not interested. I don't want to hear it. So it's so, they use bleeding hearts to come up with reasons to justify these suicidal policies. And if you say these policies are suicidal, no thinking person would do this. No country in their right mind would do this. You get called a racist or intolerant or something like that. They go on attack vectors that don't align with the argument you're putting forward. And it knocks you off, of course, because you have to defend against being called a racist. And you're not talking about the economic impact of the refugees, migrants, and other streams of people coming into the country. They continue acting in a way that is suicidal to the country, and they do not respond to the argument, the fiscal argument, or any legitimate argument. The only way they respond is by attacking you with a vector that is not related to your argument. It's wild. Like, how is this tolerable in a democratic society? I don't understand why people aren't more upset. I think they're not more upset because they don't understand what's going on. It's like a blender or a washing machine, and you can't really see what's happening clearly, right? Here's the Globe and Mail. They're talking about the Liberals must fix the housing crisis before it undermines support for immigration. Too late. Too late, by years too late. Years. And all the rhetoric around fixing this, not one person has said, it might have to do with all the people we're bringing in. Nobody said that. Nobody said that at all. Not even a little tiny bit. And so them ignoring the reality of the situation and the impact on Canadians. People have sons and daughters who are trying to find a place. They can't find a place. People have relatives or whoever trying to live on a salary that they could live on in 2018, 2019, and can't live on today because of massive changes to the country because of bad policies. And that's not happening in a bubble, right? So people are getting upset, I think, right? This is talking about the cabinet shuffle. In last week's cabinet shuffle, Prime Minister Trudeau promoted Sean Fraser out of his one of his government's rising stars from immigration to housing. His job in the new portfolio is to fix the problem he contributed to in his old role. Mr. Fraser must find a way to ease the country's critical housing shortage, a problem the Liberal government is stoking by bringing in more than 1 million newcomers a year to Canada. High levels of immigration bring growth, energy, and confidence to our country, but they also bring problems. Mr. Fraser must fix the worst problem of all, or risk undermining the Canadian experiment. It's been completely undermined anyway. They've hit the accelerator on what's going on, and they're not interested in turning it off at all. This is so. In the Canada Poly chat, we were talking about how modern society isn't fulfilling, and we have quasi tasks that we do that are quasi fulfilling, but it's not fulfilling like building your own shelter is fulfilling, or planting your own crop is fulfilling. Carrying your own water is fulfilling. I don't know about the carrying your water. I think I like plumbing a lot. But the ease of your society is contributing to your sense of anxiety, your sense of your sense of fear, your sense of there's something else. You know what I mean? Because it used to be before modern technology came along and made everything super easy. So your ability to get along in life was relatively easy, right? You turn on the tap, you get potable water, you throw a pizza pocket in the microwave, you get food. You don't have to think about it. And so you busy yourself, because getting food doesn't take so long. So you busy yourself with other tasks. So those other tasks aren't fulfilling you in the same way. And so this is a mouse experiment, the Universe 25 mouse experiment, that basically provided all the mice with everything they wanted, made their living easy, kind of like how our living is easy. And what happened was societal collapse. And I thought that it was super interesting. Like, this whole theory was this whole theory of the unending population increase drives competition and division and violence. And when you have this unending population increase combined with the violence, et cetera, the society just collapses. People are uninterested in having babies. People are uninterested in having relations with the other sex. All sorts of crazy things happen. This whole thing was very worthwhile. I'm going to just find a clip, but it's only 6 minutes and it explains it. And so this was actually compared to the Unabomber's manifesto. And the Unabomber's manifesto was basically the same thing. The Unabomber's manifesto was what I started with, and then kind of transitioned into the Universe 25 thing. But they're very, very, very similar theories. The hypothesis of the Unabomber is very similar to the outcome, I suppose, of the Universe 25 experiment. And it's just so interesting to me, right? So interesting. Okay, I think we'll start here. Here we go.
Past day 315, more than 600 mice now lived in Universe 25, rubbing shoulders on their way up and down the stairwells to eat, drink, and sleep. population growth slowed. Young ones found themselves born into a world with far more mice than meaningful social roles. Males faced a lot of competitors to defend their territory against. Many found that so stressful they gave up. Normal discourse within the community broke down, and with it the ability of mice to form social bonds. Lone females retreated to isolated nesting boxes on penthouse levels. Other males, a group Calhoun termed the beautiful ones, never sought sex and never fought. They just ate, slept, and groomed, wrapped in narcissistic introspection. Elsewhere, cannibalism, asexuality, and violence became endemic. Mouse society had collapsed. On day 560, the population peaked at 2,200 mice. A few mice survived past weaning until day 600, after which there were few pregnancies and no surviving young. As the population had stopped regenerating itself, its path to extinction was clear.
Right? So it's just very, very interesting. The whole experiment was very interesting. Are we mice being run through a similar experiment? And we are being experimented on, right? Don't forget to get your booster. And I'm sure that another booster and another booster. And if you're pregnant, don't forget to get more boosters, right? And people were asking, this is monstrous. How could you tell people to do this? There's no data on this. There's no information that says this is safe. And they say, well, safe and effective, right? Pretty wild stuff experimented on, right? Here is this guy. I listened to this yesterday. This is Douglas McGregor. He says, we've been going through the process of globalization for much longer than people realize. I'm just going to play as long as it makes sense. This was compelling. This is another 4-minute one. It's super interesting. Here we go.
They are, except, of course, the globalists at the top who know that they're in control and ruling the world. So that means you have to destroy national identities, destroy borders, effectively subvert populations from within by convincing the majority population in any country that there's something wrong with them, that they can only improve by abandoning control of their borders and inviting millions of people into their country who are radically different from them, to dilute their identity, change their identity, and ultimately erase any semblance of identity. I think that's a very important concept that most people in Europe don't understand. I don't think we in the United States get it. But if you look at the policies that we've been pursuing, it makes excellent sense, because the policies that we are pursuing are suicidal. They're designed to destroy us. Open your borders, vet no one, let everyone come in and disperse into your population. Then you create internal divisions and fights and wars and conflicts within conflicts, and you have chaos. Chaos then allows those with vast quantities of money like Soros, who are at the top of the pyramid, to exert absolute control, tell you how to live, what to believe, and so forth. And of course, a Trojan horse in the midst of all of this is atheism and nihilism and socialism. And we all know how socialism works. Anybody who lived in the so-called Eastern Bloc understands it. The state controls everything, which means a small minority governs, and everyone else is effectively reduced to some form of slavery. That's nothing that anybody with a brain wants, but that's where we are. And we have these people in Washington and London and Paris and Berlin, and they're driving this war. Now, why go to war with the Russians? Well, because the Russians sobered up, they abandoned communism. If Russia were a Soviet state, I'm sure that all of the globalists would be applauding, since they see that as yet another path to the utopia that they want to build. There used to be this thing we called the Soviet man. The Soviet man was this fictitious human being that would emerge over decades to replace all the various constituent peoples of the Soviet Union, and for that matter, Eastern Europe. And the joke, of course, in Moscow when the Soviet Union collapsed was, well, what happened to the Soviet man? Everybody looked around and, gosh, you know what they found? Ukrainians, Russians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Estonians, Uzbeks, Kazakhs, Tartars, Turks, and so forth.
See, these things do and will collapse. It's just a matter of how long it takes for the public to get completely fed up and throw the bums out, and hopefully prosecute them enough so that we have a couple of generations of kids who can grow up without having to deal with this absolute nonsense. Because it seems like either we don't do a good job of getting the bad guys, Project Paperclip. We brought the Nazi scientists to the United States in order to develop nuclear weapons, and then dropped nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then we had the G7 in Hiroshima just recently this year, right? So, I mean, nuclear weapons never once. But if you do, make sure you have the G7 on there less than 100 years later. Right. So weird, right? Everything was fine. I think garden salad was from the back garden was the food they had, because they're sustainable and all that, right? Wink. But it's very, very interesting that we are that terrible at winning wars. Like if the good guys won the Second World War, probably this wouldn't be happening right now, right? I think it was maybe a misdirection, right? A war, maybe we won that battle. Maybe there was a battle and everybody decided, all right, we're done with this. We're done with the tanks and things. We've got a different plan to try. Let's try the different plan. So, right? Like it just seems like we're missing something on this whole Second World War thing. Maybe missing a lot more than just one thing. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful